Yeah, I think we will start. Okay, we will start with. So we have a couple of questions that have been listed on the event page. That I would probably ask a bit more about your background as a coach, and
Yeah.
in your background in general, and what made you go into this line of work, and yeah, what is your passion behind this? Yeah.
Yeah.
And any other
Okay.
question from the audience?
Mhm.
So yeah, I think
Sure.
maybe I can quickly ask you about Theodora. So maybe you can give us a quick introduction about yourself and what do you do and what is your background?
Mhm. Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for having me today. I'm very happy to kind of, share about this topic because I am very passionate about self-awareness. And to give you some input with respect to my background, it all started when I was in high school. I became obsessed with personality typology by chance because I found a book in my INTJ father's bookshelf. And I got so engrossed into studying about MBTI and the cognitive functions that I think this was like the biggest factor that made me go into this professional direction. So I studied psychology in New York, in the UK, and then I continued my education in Romania because that's where I'm originally from, on conflict management, on professional coaching, psychodrama, professional training. And I also worked in human resources for the first part of my career. So this is how I basically combined my passion for understanding why people are different and what makes them tick and why some people get along and why some people don't get along. And that really kind of pushed me into this direction of studying these particular topics. I also decided to do some research at university on personality and self-awareness. So I looked at how people's level of emotional resilience changes depending on their personality type. So at some point later today, I can also share a bit about that. This is kind of my background in terms of what I do. I'm a self-employed life coach and also a personal development trainer. I teach courses on topics like typology, so MBTI and Enneagram, communication skills, and public speaking skills primarily. And I coach on a variety of life-related topics.
I see. Yeah, and I understand you also have a YouTube channel and a blog.
Yeah.
That you are pretty active. Yep.
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel, INF Jinxed, that I've been posting content on for about 3 years. And I also have some running content on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and a newsletter. Yeah, I think that's what you mean by blog, probably.
Yeah, I guess you are more active on YouTube, I think. And maybe LinkedIn.
And LinkedIn, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I see. So I guess that the so is there any other particular event or personal experience that make you feel that you want to really specialize in this work? Any other special moment?
I think probably when I was, again, about 16 years old, I had this like life crisis moment where I said, okay, I feel like I don't see my future clearly enough. And as an INFJ, that's very important to me. I find comfort in being able to kind of anticipate what's going to happen. And I said, okay, I really need to figure out what my purpose is in this world and what I want to do. So instinctively, I basically used self-awareness as a tool to say, what am I really passionate about? And funnily enough, as a high school student, I said, I like astrology and I like reading. And then I said, okay, but astrology is just a hobby. Like, what's really behind this? So I realized that the reason why I liked astrology was because I was trying to figure out people's personalities and how they were different and why they were different. So I kind of related that to psychology. And reading is still something I love, but it's more of a side thing. And I remember my parents were telling me, like, you're 16 years old, you don't need to figure out your entire future, like now, you have time. And I was like, no, I have to figure it out. So it was really self-awareness that helped me to get comfort in myself that this is the path I should be following.
Okay, got it. Yeah, actually, okay. So just to clarify, astrology means horoscope, right? or is it
Yes,
the star and the I keep getting confused between astrology and the study of the stars and the
astronomy, you mean?
astronomy. Okay,
Yes.
astronomy.
Yeah, astrology is horoscopes, but I wasn't interested in the actual like predictions, because those were a bit silly. I was more interested in like, the personality descriptions associated with each sign. Like as a Sagittarius, as a Capricorn, as a Virgo, you are like this, like this, like this. That's what I enjoyed.
Yeah, I guess it's I would say, yeah, it might be less scientific, but it's what the word is, a footstep, or like it's a stepping stone into typology.
Yeah.
And we cannot and I would say that horoscope is very colorful, very has very powerful imagery, and there's some truth to it. There's some science to it. I wouldn't discount it totally. And yeah, I guess it's, yeah, again, I have a very similar story. You mentioned 16 years old.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I was about the same age when I had my quarter life crisis at the 16 or 17. Yeah. But I came across MBTI much later, maybe in my university. So I don't I was quite miserable for several years as well. In high school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Likewise.
Yeah. Hey, hi Dorothy and Charlie. Okay, thanks for coming today.
Hi Dorothy. Hi Charlie.
And if it's comfortable, you can also turn on your camera and talk to us. Otherwise, it's fine if you are busy or you are eating dinner. So it's, yeah, I know some of you are still might still be eating dinner here in Singapore. Okay, so that is very interesting, Teodora, about your identity crisis and your seeking of self-awareness. So what do you think is the definition of self-awareness? What is the dimension, and what is someone who is truly self-aware look like? Have you met one?
So I will answer the second part of the question by saying something that one of my mentors told me a while ago. She said, once you start the journey of self-awareness, you realize you will never stop again. And I think this kind of puts self-awareness into perspective, in the sense that it shows us that it's not like we just tick some boxes and then we are self-aware. It's a process that is very deep and very difficult sometimes. And because we constantly evolve and change as individuals, there's always more to know about ourselves. I think, someone who's self-aware in general is someone who's able to reflect on their own contribution in their life situations. So for example, if they have conflicts with people or a difficult situation at work, they don't immediately just blame other people or blame the situation. They also look within and figure out what their contribution is to that. Also, someone who's self-aware is a person that is able to make proactive decisions about their life, because they know themselves, their personality, their values, their vision, their principles, and they are able to make decisions that are aligned with these values, with this personality dimension, and so on and so forth, which of course increases the chance that the person will be fulfilled in their life and happy with the decisions that they made. And just to add one more idea, this is something I learned in a coaching course that I did by Kane Ramsey. And I took this idea from him. He said, the purpose of coaching is to help people become self-aware, but not just to be happy, but rather to grow, to be mature, to be resilient, to be strong, to be able to deal with life situations. And really, I think that's a really important dimension of self-awareness.
Okay, I see. Okay, I think that's so what is your estimate of how common to come across someone who is reasonably or self-aware in the workplace? From your
it's difficult. I would say not very high. Again, it depends, how we define being self-aware, but someone who scores high on self-awareness, I would say maybe 10% of people, especially in Europe. From what I've seen in companies, people tend to be very externally focused, to please others, to meet goals, to achieve tasks, and sometimes this connection with the self is completely lost.
And do you think that the more senior the person or the more successful the person, the more likely they will be self-aware?
No, unfortunately not. I mean, in terms of seniority, definitely not. I think maturity can play a role in self-awareness, but some people mature through some experiences, some don't.
Mm.
And in terms of success, it really means how we define success. Because if we, go by the standard definition of making a lot of money and having this top position, top executive role, then I certainly have seen a lot of managers who are not particularly in touch with themselves, especially if they are very driven by external measures like, are people going to like me? Am I going to impress others with how much money I make or what kind of car I have? So if we define success as the ability to be happy and fulfilled in our lives, then yes, definitely that correlates with higher self-awareness.
Okay. Yo, thank you for that. So from your experience, why do you think that self-awareness is important, is a long-term solution, is important in the long term in the workplace for leadership and for management?
Mhm. I think the main reason is because it's something that's within you. It's not something that changes depending on the situation or the environment that you're in. It's something that you always have with you, kind of like a personal resource. So if you have a problem at work, if you don't know where to go next, if you don't know how to deal with people on your team, if you have conflicts that you need to navigate or financial problems, self-awareness will be with you. It will not be something kind of flimsy and unreliable. And when you have it with you and it's your personal resource, you can come back to yourself and you can say, okay, what is up to me in this situation? What is up to the other person? What's under my control? What's not under my control? What are some of the things that I have done wrong, which I can improve on? And what are things that I need to accept and let go of? So it helps to I visualize it as a stable ground that the person sits on, and it's there and it's supporting you in all of these difficult situations.
Yeah, okay, that is a very I would say it's a beautiful metaphor, stable ground that for you to stand upon. Yeah, because I think a lot of training program, a lot of corporate program, a lot of self-help book, they focus a lot on the external factors, the the external appearance, soft skills. So I think what I mean, what is your opinion on that? Because I think a lot of people can get by quite well just putting up an appearance or just focusing on the people skill aspect. But do you think of any consequence or how sustainable that is? An example, specific example, have you seen people who focus a lot on the external?
I think that external is important too. We don't have to, go into the extreme of saying only self-awareness matters, but external things are not always enough to build a kind of life that we want to build, because again, they are less under our control. And if we focus too much on appearance, we sometimes start feeling like an imposter. And I want to share a bit about that, because I see with a lot of my clients, and also with people that I know in my personal life, even with myself in the past, in certain situations, that imposter syndrome is a great deal. And a lot of people suffer from it. And I realized that this advice that people give you a lot on the internet, like if you feel like an imposter, then you're not an imposter, is not helpful. Because it doesn't go deep enough to deal with the problems. And I noticed that it comes when someone is too focused on the external things, on how they show up for others, how they, manage to impress other people, and so on and so forth. and the person loses touch with what they really value. So there's this internal conflict in the individual, and that causes the imposter syndrome. So this is an example of when I'm focusing too much on the outside world, I disconnect internally, and hence I will feel extreme anxiety, because imposter syndrome is associated with high anxiety as well.
Yeah, I think interesting. I didn't know that is internal anxiety. Okay, yep. I think it's yeah, I think a lot of people who put up a successful appearance, a smooth appearance, is have a lot of internal anxiety. And I
Yes.
think if you truly are self-aware, or you have practiced self-awareness, you can see through it, see through the facade. Yep.
Yeah. Maybe,
Yep, continue.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one more thing, maybe for those of you who are listening to us today. I know that social media nowadays can be this place where everything seems to be perfect and everyone is posting about their success and the things that are good in their lives. And that can cause us to feel like, oh, everyone has it all together and I don't, when in reality, most people feel the same way. And again, kind of coming back to ourselves and connecting to that self-awareness element really helps us to see that I don't need to have the same success, or my success doesn't have to look the same as yours or the other person's, and so on.
Yeah, correct. Okay, that go to the that lead us to the next question. What do you think are the best tools to enhance self-awareness?
Yes, I like this question very much. So I would say, in my opinion, there are 5 really important tools. The first one is coaching as a method. So professional coaching is a space where the coach creates the safe environment for the client and asks insightful questions, reflects things back, guides the person in their own internal world. I once saw a video, and I'm sorry because I don't remember who did it, but there was a coach who was saying, I imagine that I have my hand on my client's shoulder. We walk together, we close our eyes, and the client is guiding me through their internal space. And because I ask questions and I'm curious about that space, the client also becomes more self-aware in the process. And this is why it's really important not to give advice in coaching, because people get to access their own wisdom and solutions to problems that maybe they haven't previously considered. But more so than that, they become aware of their own patterns, their own beliefs, their own feelings, which are often really, inspiring and help with moving forward. The next 2 tools are the personality tools. So because we are also in a typology community now, MBTI or Jungian typology and Enneagram. I really like both of them. I discovered MBTI first and then Enneagram about 2 years later. And for my own personal growth journey, I found them to be some of the most helpful things ever, because I realized, first of all, there was nothing wrong with me just because I functioned a little bit differently than some of my peers. But secondly, it also helped me to see, especially Enneagram, where I'm kind of lying to myself, where I'm letting myself be guided by my pride or my insecurities, because I'm a type 2, the helper. So I realized how my people-pleasing tendency is often holding me back in life. And I still use Enneagram 10 years later to be in touch with myself and say, okay, now you're not in the right direction. Let's come back to what's really important. The next tool that I really like is discovering one's personal vision. So this means really connecting back to that moment when I was 16 and I envisioned the future that I wanted to create for myself. And I did that again a few years later, because I really see that when one is able to identify that long-term vision and to start really connecting to why it's important, the person is able to make much more progress in moving there and to not feel stuck anymore. And the fifth tool that I really like is personal values. So this one means discovering 2 or 3 core values that the individual has, which can be kind of like guiding principles in one's life. And to kind of, put my foot into the psychology or the scientific psychology space, a lot of studies show that people who live in alignment with their 2, 3 core values, they are much happier and much fulfilled in their life. And just some examples of core values are, I don't know, support for other people, generosity, kindness, authenticity, hard work, reliability, excellence. It depends on the individual, but it's really important to discover them and to look at our lives and say, how many actions do I do every day which are aligned with my values? And this is an automatic way to increase your level of well-being. So yeah, these 5 are my favorite ones.
Wow, thanks. That is pretty comprehensive. I didn't think much about some of the. Oh yeah, I think that's very insightful. Okay, at this junction, I think about halfway through, I would like to ask the audience if you have any question for Teodora.
Yeah.
Anyway, welcome AJ. So we have AJ, Elena, Shali, and Dorothy.
Hi, everyone.
Anyone have question, you can either speak or type into the chat. Again, for those just came, Teodora is life coach and a trainer from Germany, and she has a lot of experience with conflict management as well as typology like Enneagram and MBTI. So yeah, I think today is a very casual session where we just talk about what came to our mind when it comes to self-awareness and tools. Anyone? Dorothy, any question? I can recognize Dorothy and AJ, they are regular member. Not sure.
I think I also met Dorothy at the first webinar that I did in August about Enneagram and leadership and setting boundaries.
Yeah, I think Dorothy was quite active with the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from Dorothy. Is our cognitive distortion and emotions, such as from people pressure, can override our self-awareness?
Yes, it can. And I think this is one of the main traps we have to pay attention to because, and I'm going to also explain how I do it myself. I am someone with a natural tendency to want to make people happy and to, kind of people please and be accommodating to others. That's my natural tendency as a type 2, also as someone who has high extroverted feeling. So sometimes, especially if I go through a stressful period or I'm very tired and I don't have a lot of cognitive resources, I end up feeling like, oh my God, I have so many things that I need to do to make everybody happy in my life. And I feel this pressure that you're mentioning in your question. And when I feel like that, I realize that everything starts collapsing. I start sleeping poorly. I start having fights with people. I start not being able to concentrate on my work as well. So that's a red flag. And when I see that happening, knowing what I know about myself, I say, okay, this is a pattern. I recognize it. Now, what I have to do is come back. And what I mean by come back is say, okay, what are my needs? And which ones of them are unfulfilled? Maybe my need for rest is unfulfilled because I've been erratic and trying to help everybody. Maybe my need for support myself is unfulfilled because I haven't asked for help and support. So then I try to proactively find solutions to deal with the needs that are unsatisfied or unfulfilled. Maybe it's something very simple like going to sleep earlier or relaxing for a day, or maybe it's something more difficult that I need to work through in terms of some triggers or insecurities that I have and how they play out in the situation, because perhaps that people pressure that I feel is related to an insecurity that I have about myself. And that's an example of how self-awareness stays with me in these moments when the people pressure and the expectations from others can override it or take me out of the alignment with myself. So it's very much a dynamic kind of process.
Yeah.
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I think, okay, I just want to add on a bit is, yes, I think self-awareness can be both short-term and long-term. So when it comes to our personal needs and social demand, it can be a short-term needs where we kind of forget about our own needs. But it's also quite common in my training, in my coaching, that I meet people when we talk about self-identity, where people have for such a long time they have been doing the same work, or they kind of stretch and put on a mask that are totally different, and it's when it comes to typology and identifying their type, their pattern, is so difficult, because they say I can't differentiate between what I have trained myself to become good at and who I actually am. So do you have any advice or how people can overcome that?
I also see that too in my own sessions, in my own work with clients. I think the first thing is not to be too rigid about trying to define ourselves. Like, yes, we like typology, we like knowing what our personality type is, but we are much more than that. So it's okay if things are a little bit gray or fuzzy. That's the first step. The second one is trying to kind of maybe take some time, take a diary, take a piece of paper, and start asking yourself some questions about the situation that you're in right now. So maybe usually when people feel like this, they experience very negative emotions, confusion, self-doubt, anxiety. And you can ask yourself 3 questions in this situation. First one is, what am I feeling and why am I feeling like that? The second one is, what is under my control in this situation and what is not under my control in this situation? And the third one is, what are some positive aspects to this, confusing moment or to this difficult situation? Because sometimes, the really annoying situations, they also have some benefits. They teach us something, they challenge us, they show us something about ourselves. And that can help to kind of restructure our minds a little bit and to also access our intuition, because our intuition knows who we are and who is somebody else. We just need to also learn to listen to it and trust it. When people ask that question, they are very much stuck in the mind, in the rationality. And the mind is like, well, how do I know? Because I don't have facts that I can support my claims with. But the intuition knows. And in order to get there, we need to open up a space with some insightful questions, with some quiet time where people are not, constantly kind of asking us something. And I don't know, for people who have access to this, there are some cards that I sometimes use in some trainings. They are called Dixit cards or points of view, which have these really interesting symbols or pictures that are very evocative. And sometimes if you have a question about yourself that your mind is struggling to answer, you can take one of those cards and describe immediately what you feel when you look at it and how it correlates with your question. And sometimes this usage of an external symbol to reflect back to the self can be very helpful to connect also to your intuition and to answer these kinds of questions. I don't know if it made sense. I know it's a bit of a...
Yeah. Well, I think that is definitely helpful. I mean, it does, when you mention a lot about intuition, it remind me a lot about introverted intuition. Of course, everyone has that as well in their function stack, but that I don't know. Maybe it might resonate more with people who are more who have that function as well. But yeah, I think that is definitely helpful. As an overview of so we hope that have covered Dorothy's question.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, if you have any question, feel free to type in the chat. We can move on to the next question, which is, so we have covered some of the Teodora has covered 5 tools, 5 framework for self-awareness. So let's focus on the 2 big typology framework, which is MBTI and Enneagram. What do you think as the main difference, and when do you use one and then the other?
So I have this drawing. I can also share it later, where I basically represent how I imagine MBTI and Enneagram. So I see MBTI as a skeleton, as the structure of the mind, the way we process information, the way we perceive the world, the way we make decisions. Kind of like a program that is running in our minds and which kind of biases us to function in a certain way. But it's not good, it's not bad, it's neutral. It's kind of like saying you are red and I'm blue and this person is green. The Enneagram, on the other hand, talks more about emotional insecurities and the feelings which drive the skeleton to do something. So if the MBTI is the skeleton, Enneagram is the soul or the heart. It's what sets the skeleton in motion. It's what motivates the skeleton to do something. I learned at university in cognitive psychology that emotions are the only things that motivate people to do something. If we didn't have emotions, we would just lie in bed because our minds don't have this, motivational factor. So MBTI describes how we think. Enneagram describes what motivates us and stresses us internally. So this is the main difference between the two frameworks.
So what do you think are the situations, or what is the best use of this framework in different contexts? Which one is more suitable in which context?
I usually prefer combining them because I find it to be very helpful. I sometimes see people who are both the same MBTI type, but they have different Enneagram types, and that can really change how they present themselves to the world and how they feel about certain things. So looking at the combination gives us a more complex view of ourselves. That's one thing. However, when we are dealing with emotional pain and triggers and insecurities, Enneagram tends to be more helpful because it directly addresses these topics. Like I talked about myself being a 2. For me, the main pain point is the fear of not being loved by others and the drive to please other people. So I feel like I deserve love. So if I notice myself struggling with those kinds of things, Enneagram is my go-to tool. However, if people are looking more like, for example, managers, leaders are looking more to see how the team can work better together, how people can communicate better with each other, I find MBTI or Jungian typology to be more helpful because it also talks about interaction styles, communication styles, different ways of making decisions. And you can definitely see team compatibility there. And a funny thing, I was once working with a startup doing a training for them. And the founders were ENTP and ENTJ. And without even knowing about typology, half of their team was also made of ENTPs and ENTJs because they chose people that naturally resonated with them. Yep. So they had, a lot of similarity in the team, and they realized, well, we need some sensors to also get things done sometimes, to kind of disconnect from ideas and connect to the real world more. So MBTI can be very helpful when thinking about group and team dynamics as well.
Okay. Yep. I think I agree. I think that is a key idea. I would also foresee that MBTI is more suitable for corporate setting and teamwork.
Yeah.
And Enneagram has that more personal depth into it. That is it's a lot deeper. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Actually, do you have any specific or real life example of either for yourself or other people or your clients that you think that typology have really transformed or helped solve a very tough problem?
Yes. The first thing that I did was I made everyone at my previous workplace obsessed with typology because I was talking about it so much. I used to work in a human resources company. So I did some workshops just to kind of tell my colleagues about it. And everyone got so interested that it was part of the day-to-day conversations. And someone would say, I reacted like this because my introverted sensing needs this and this and this. Or I reacted like this because I have a preference for thinking and I'm not comfortable making decisions in this way. And I really found that it helped the team to work better with each other and not to take things personally as much. Because sometimes especially in the extroverted feeling and extroverted thinking dynamic, there were a lot of clashes in how these people made decisions. And the knowledge of MBTI at a team level created more cohesion, better communication, and better decisions. Then, in my personal life, I apply it all the time when I but when I interact with friends or with other people, family. And it helps me to know how to adapt the way I communicate, especially if I have a conflict with that person. It also helps me to explain to them why I react in a certain way myself, so that we both have more like tolerance and respect for each other. And for conflicts, I find it to be extremely, extremely helpful almost every single time. And then with like coaching clients, this one is, I don't know, very like varied and complex. But most people who are interested in MBTI and Enneagram, they also use it as a way to either deal with conflicts in their life or to make decisions about their professional path. Because we know that MBTI can show us that we might be more suited for certain professions than others. Doesn't mean we have to do that, but it can show us that. I used it when I realized that working in the corporate world was making me very unhappy and that my NF self needed a different kind of context. So I created a business that is aligned with my personality and is not overwhelming. So these are some ideas that come to mind now when you ask me this.
Okay, yeah, I think that again, yeah, I have similar experience too. I mean, but more for myself, so far I find it's a bit like 50-50 when it comes to trying to make people around me appreciate typology. It's a hit or miss. Some people really get the aha moment from it. But some of my close friends, even though I told them so many times about MBTI and the functions, they feel like the next time I meet them, they will ask me the same thing again. Yeah, so it clicks with some people and it doesn't click with the other. And of course, I think it's common. A lot of people can recognize that it's easier for intuitive.
Yeah.
Especially intuitive NF, especially for them to grasp the typology concepts, and it's always a challenge for the majority, the sensing dominant, and I think that is a very challenging mission, as well as to find a way to speak it to a larger audience. Okay.
To kind of just to kind of validate what you're saying, I noticed the same pattern. And I also feel like saying that, it's okay if you don't resonate with it. Maybe some other self-awareness tools work better for you. So if you feel like typology is not really for you, you can use the other tools that I mentioned. They can also help. So it's perfectly fine to have different preferences as well.
And what do you think are the more, if not beyond typology, what do you think are the more common way that people make sense of other people?
I think for certain types, and I noticed this with like STJs in particular, in my experience, they have the most resistance to learning about typology, or they feel like it's too abstract. For them, it works to like work on very practical skills. So develop communication skills in a very concrete way, or develop conflict management skills in a very concrete way. Or be in a coaching process where they can be asked questions about the things that they care about, which might be different than what an NF cares about. And then they feel valued and they feel like someone actually listens to them and cares about what they have to say. So they are more likely to open up and create this space for, more self-awareness, more personal development. I've had some ESTJs like say, this personality typology is like really strange. I don't trust it. Like I can't touch it. I can't trust it. Which is funny because it fits with the cognitive preferences as well.
Yeah. I've met some ISTJ who are very knowledgeable about typology, but they tend to approach it from a very practical and very serious, straightforward approach. It's quite funny. They like to learn from the best. They would definitely want to look at the qualification of the trainer, or the one that is the most popular option. Those are very important for them. But I did meet some. They are definitely the minority. But I did meet some of them who are really knowledgeable about.
Me too.
Yeah, if they really put in the effort, they really can overcome anything. But I guess that is true for any type. You can always overcome your weakness and learn, as long as you have the interest in it.
Yeah, agree. Definitely, there are STJs who like typology, but they seem to be in a lower percentage from the total population of STJs, at least in my experience.
Okay, when it comes, it's a quick question. When it comes to workplace conflict and dynamics, what do you think is the most common cause of conflict when it comes to typology? I mean, different types.
I think the biggest one is a communication difference. So I'm referring now to Linda Berens's interaction style model, which says that half of the types have a directive communication style and half of them have an informative communication style. So especially with executives and seniors, if you have people of these two different types interacting, they often clash. I'm going to give an example. So I once saw a conflict like this between an ENTJ manager and an ENFP who was also a manager, but was below the ENTJ in the company. The ENTJ asked the ENFP, can you please tell me the results of project X? So the ENFP started like rambling a bit and kind of covering a lot of different ideas and jumping from one idea to the other. And the ENTJ got very annoyed and he was like, well, what are you doing? Like, you don't want to answer my question. Something went wrong and you're avoiding it. And she was like, what? Of course not. I'm just trying to explain to you what's really important. So you have all the background information because I really value that you know this. And then they had a fight about it. And I saw this conflict happening and I thought, well, it's amazing how typology perfectly reflects why this happens. The directive communicator, which is the ENTJ, needs to have concise communication, structured communication, and very to the point. The ENFP, being an informative communicator, likes to provide a lot of context and background information to make sure that the other person understood their message. And sometimes when they clash, they make assumptions about the other based on their own personality. And then a conflict happens, which could have easily been solved knowing this about the other person and about the self.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so communication style. I guess it might have to do with might also have to do with intuition versus sensing.
Yes.
Even though I think directive style is more of judging type, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think intuitive and sensing is quite a big barrier as well.
Also, probably out of all of the letters or dichotomies, intuition, sensing can cause the most difficulty in communication. Like, because there are more sensors in the general population, in corporations, at work, intuitives can feel misunderstood and unappreciated when they share their ideas, because the sensing types might find those ideas to be impractical. So I think, I also want to make this constructive. A piece of advice for intuitives, I've applied this myself, is learn to communicate in a more concrete way, especially when you talk to sensors. Learn to give examples, learn to refer to personal experience, because then you can create a bridge. You can connect better with the sensing types, and you are less likely to experience conflict there. When I was learning public speaking, my trainer was an ESTJ, and he always told me, Teodora, you have too many abstract ideas. I don't understand what you're talking about. So he taught me to say, okay, this is an idea, this is an example, this is an idea, this is an example. And then I can reach more people with that kind of style.
I think I have the same issue as well. Yeah. Okay, I think that linked to the final question that we have on the agenda here. Any practical advice for dealing with difficult workplace conflict and or different individuals?
So from a personality point of view, I would really recommend understanding the different styles of communication: informative, directive, abstract and concrete, fact-based, value-based, so that's the thinking, feeling, and then initiating versus responding, initiating for the extroverts, responding for the introverts. And try to adapt your communication style to the person that you talk to. Don't try to just speak how you would normally speak, but try to create a bridge. Try to take some steps forward to meet the other person where they are. This will increase the chance of having a successful collaboration and communication. Another practical advice for conflict would be to understand what the conflict is really about. So for that, I'm going to be referring to conflict theory, which says there's always a pyramid in any conflict. And we have 3 levels in each of these pyramids. The first one is the position, the second one is the interest, and the last one is the need. Most people get stuck at the level of the position. So I say, I want something, and you say you want something. And then it seems that we have a conflict and we can't solve it unless someone wins and someone loses. But most of the times that's not a real problem, it's just the tip of the iceberg. So we have to go deeper to the level of the interest and say, by doing this position, what do I actually want? And what does the other person want? Let's take an example. Let's say that, I usually like giving this example. I have a pen, okay? And both you and me, Tuan, we want this pen, so we fight about it. That's our position. The interest is that by having this pen that has my company logo, for example, I'm going to a business meeting and I want to impress my client because I look professional with this pen. And you, Tuan, you might say, well, the reason I want it is because it reminds me of a coworker who left the company. We were very good friends and she gave it to me. So I want to keep it as a memory. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. But we can go one level deeper, which is the level of the needs. So what need am I fulfilling in myself by going to this client and impressing them? Well, it's the need for self-esteem. It's the need for realization, for achievement, for me. And for you, what need does it fulfill to have this pen from your coworker? Probably a need for belonging or connection with that person. So now if we ask the question, how can we solve our problem, but by taking both of our needs into account, we start seeing many more possibilities, not just fighting about this one pen. One of them could be me saying, no, you saying, look, I have another pen. No, or maybe not a pen, but I have a notebook, and the notebook has the logo of the company. You can take it with you to the client meeting. It will have the same effect, and I'll keep the pen. Or I might say, actually, I realize my need is to impress others. Maybe I need to work better on my sales skills or my negotiation skills for the client meeting. So when we have conflicts, it's very helpful to understand the interest and the needs, and then to ask ourselves, how can we solve the conflict by fulfilling the needs of both or all of the parties involved in the conflict? And this works, I promise you. I learned this from a professor from my conflict management studies. He's an INTJ, and he's a professional mediator in Romania. And he said when clients come to him with huge conflicts, sometimes huge corporations fighting for a huge amount of money, usually it's a very personal issue that they have with each other, the managers. And looking at the needs, they solve the problem and they don't need to go to court anymore and spend even more money on lawyers and things like that. So it works. I use it all the time in every conflict that I have.
So do you mean usually it's possible for people to come together and discuss that, or it's more convenient to just each person just take a step back and just try to empathize more with the other person? Because I don't know how convenient or common it is for people to just sit in a room and discuss that out, or it's just more of an advice in general that we should take a big picture approach to other people.
Yes. more the second one, so reflecting ourselves, and often you will be able to see that you can guess what the other person's interests and needs are, or you have a feel of it, and then you can suggest solutions. Sometimes you can also talk to the other person. They will be open, and by asking them questions, you'll get more information, and you will also make them feel heard, that you're not just like fighting, you're also taking the time to understand them. And also in companies, you can talk to HR, you can talk to your leaders or to your, I don't know, coaches if there are, and sometimes they can do this mediation. I used to do it when I was doing HR before as well. And it was helpful to also have like an objective party in the situation.
Yeah, I think that is a good advice. I think it's yeah. I think that is the last question we have for today. I will leave the floor to the audience. If you have any question for Teodora.
Yeah, go ahead. If there's anything you want to know, feel free to ask in the chat or by turning on your camera.
Yeah, AJ,
or your
welcome,
mic.
AJ. You have any question?
Not at the moment. Thank you.
AJ is one of the regular member of our typology community.
Mhm. Yeah, Charlie
Okay.
says I don't have at the moment. Okay.
Dorothy, any question you have? Dorothy, are you there? Not sure.
We can also wait a couple more minutes if you feel like something is kind of crystallizing in your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I mean, one thought I have related to the you know, the pyramids triangle that you mentioned is a similar principle that I have learned as I progress through my career is that especially to handle bosses and managers, it's always good to read behind what they want. It will give you a lot of more freedom to act. Like if they say they want A, B, C, it's good to actually guess what they truly want. What is a bigger picture objective? So that, because from my experiences, especially for the younger, inexperienced employees, if you take everything that the managers want at face value, over time it will add up, and you feel like you don't have time to do everything. Oh, this, yeah, I have to do this, I have to do this, everything seems to, yeah, it's very hard to be perfect. But if you look at behind what he truly wanted, a lot of time is what your bosses want is a lot simpler, a lot, yeah, and if you keep, you keep taking their feedback or the instruction, and then you go one step further and see behind it, you can condense it, and it's one of the best way to save time and effort in the future. Yeah.
To second what you're saying, my father was an INTJ and he worked in like management for a long time. He told me one of the strategies he learned as a manager is to set very high expectations because he knows people won't get to the level that he's expecting, but by raising the bar higher, he also raises the quality. So he told me when I was like very new to the workplace, don't take what your boss says that at face value, exactly what you said.
But isn't that an unnecessary stress to the employees?
It can be. It can be. Sometimes the pressure that some types, especially the TJ types, can put on others can make them feel like, can make the other people feel like, okay, I'm not appreciated here. I have to work very hard to achieve something. So it's up to the manager to create a balance between that, where I raise people, I challenge them, but I also don't create that much like stress and drama in the company. And from the employee's perspective, maybe knowing this, that some managers do it on purpose, can help you to not take it as personally or not pressure yourself as much in return.
Yeah, that's why knowing typology help, because what just now the example is from an INTJ or ENTJ, that could be very different expectation from let's say a more sensing dominant boss or someone who's more feeling. Very different expectation. And I guess INTJ or ENTJ, it's much harder to read in general what they want. So I mean, I think it's a way of blessing, especially for young workers, young employees to be mentored or to work under someone who is more similar to them. In personality. It's going to be quite challenging from my own experience to have to work with bosses who are very different. It was a nightmare, because especially feel like you cannot make them happy, because you're just on very different wavelengths.
I agree. I noticed that Dorothy asked something. Is reading people skills is a part of self-awareness, because we cannot read people mind. So reading others per se is not a self-awareness like skill. It's something complementary. However, your own self-awareness can sometimes help with reading other people. And the reason for that is underlying themes beyond personality are very common for a lot of people, because we are all people, we all have similar needs and like core desires and things like that. And sometimes the more you know about yourself, the more able you are to also understand other people on a deeper level. So in that way, the two of them are connected. But no, they are not the same thing. They are two separate skills. I don't know if Tuan, you also want to say something about this.
Yeah, I think I always believe that it's more like a result, more like a consequence. You have better self-awareness, it will lead to better people skills. But again, it's just I have to be very careful, because it's my perspective as an introvert, just sort of my personality type. I have met extrovert who might they appear to think the opposites. But I still a big believer of self-awareness as the foundation. People skill is more like a result of that.
And I would say that, sorry, go ahead.
No, you could please continue. Yep.
Just wanted to say that, self-awareness can definitely help you with people skills, but of course you can also work on other skills like your communication skills, your conflict management skills, your negotiation skills, and they can come together to help you deal with people and situations.
Yeah, we hope that answered the question, Dorothy. Anyone else? Charlie, any question from you? AJ?
Okay.
Okay, if not, I think, we just reached the 1 hour mark for today's Q&A webinar. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for this short casual chat with Teodora. And stay tuned. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask via email or in the meetup chat. We can bring it up. So thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for joining, and for anything else, just feel free to reach out to us. Happy to know that, Charlie. Have a lovely rest of your day or evening, depending on where you are right now.
Okay, bye, guys.
Bye. Good night.
Bye-bye.